Hello, welcome to another video of the Social Enterprise Program. This video are going to be looking at the empathize phase of the design thinking process. As I mentioned before, this phase is extremely important. Yes, this is the main, the cornerstone of this process, the cornerstone of this methodology is we have to start to understand our users. That's the way we start. We cannot start it by our understanding of the problem. We need to involve others. One great tool to do this is the empathy map. What we're trying to do with this empathy map is we want to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person, right? This is what we're trying to do when we empathize. We want to put ourselves in the shoes and understand the world and explore the world through the eyes and the senses, not just the eyes, the senses of the user. So what this tool lets you do, which is really, really great, and there's different types of canvas, more complex, simpler ones, is you can start with lighting up who are we empathizing with. Something really important here is if you notice that you are starting to feel like, okay, well, this user sometimes feels this way, but sometimes feels this other way, depending on X or Y. Be careful, because then you might have two different users there, right? So just be mindful that if you're finding it hard to define whether it's black or white on one side or the other, then you might be having two different users, and you just create different empathy maps, okay? You want to create one empathy map per user group or per persona, it's called in design thinking. So who are we empathizing with? And then what do they need to do? What is the job they need to do? This doesn't mean it's like an actual job, that's just the name it's been given in some of these tools. But what is the task that this person has to do? In the case of Uber, the job of the user is to go from point A to point B. Yeah, so pretty straightforward. Once you're done with this, which you already worked on last session, what we do is we start to look at what they see, what they say, what they do, and what do they hear. This is really important because they might say something, but then do something different. So you want to be careful with that. And it's really important to also understand what they're seeing, or what they're hearing. What do they hear from their neighbors? What do they see in the news, in social media? This will all affect our user. And lastly, once you go through all these external senses, you want to go inside, right? And it's about what the user is thinking and what the user is feeling. And this will start to give you a hint of what do the user wants and what does the user need. So those are the pains and the gains of the user. How to gather this information? Interviews are a great way of doing it, but I don't want you to stop only at interviews. Now, an interview, just to make a pause there, an interview is not a survey, right? This is really important. Have conversations, go and have a conversation with your user. You will learn so much more than a survey. With a survey, you will only learn what you want to learn. And with an interview, a conversation, you will learn things that you didn't know. So there's so much more richness, and the user might start to give you new features that you need to incorporate, or perhaps new products that you need to create. So go have conversations, don't do surveys when you are doing interviews. They say 5 interviews is a really good starting point to get a good sense of what's the direction of the type of insights you'll be getting, and you start to find some trends, right? So you're looking for things that repeat, or things that are completely missing. Just start to aggregate this information. Something that you can pair this with is observations. Really, like I mentioned before, when we're looking at what do they do and what do they say, they might tell you one thing when you interview them, and they might do something different when it comes to the action. So it is really good to also go and observe them. And the third leg of this triangle, or third corner, and I think it's a fantastic corner, is the immersion, right? So you want to experience what your user is experiencing. And this is really, really great. So for example, if you're producing a product for someone who can't walk, maybe spend some time in a wheelchair and see how that feels. Go around uni in a wheelchair and see what happens. If you want to work with homeless people, spend some time in the street. If you want to, now this can be tricky. This can be tricky because if you want to help mental health people with mental health problems, it's going to be challenging. But usually that's why some of the best inventions and innovations come from people who are their own users, right? It's people who recover from mental health problems that then want to go help mental health people, people with mental health problems. So that is not coincidence, right? So we'll send you some empathy maps. Go ahead and start to think about how can you start to gather this information. Have a conversation. You don't need to do the interview straight away. You don't need to do the interviews if you don't want to, but have a conversations with all your group, bring together all your experiences and start to fill out an empathy map of your user. It will be extremely helpful. I'll see you in the next video. We'll be talking about insights and ideation from those insights.